This is Matthew, host of the Superhero Ethics Podcast, and I've got an ethical question for you. If I'm trying to help you not listen to ads, is it ethical for me to do an ad to help you do that? If you go to our website, theethicalpanda.com, and just click on the join button, for $5 a month, $55 a year, you get to hear all of our episodes without ads. Was I ethical in doing this? Let me know. Hello and welcome to this episode of Superhero Ethics. Fans, I have some exciting news for you today. I have a co-host. We've been going for almost a year now, I think. Maybe more, maybe less. I have no idea how time works. But we've been having just like weekly guests and lots of that stuff. And we're still going to have guests coming on from time to time. But Paul Christopher Hoppe, Zen madman, giant Buddha, poker player extraordinaire, poker coach, poker writer, misanthrope extraordinaire, atheist, person of all pronouns, person of all sorts of socialistic libertarian ideas. Paul Hoppe, who was on the first podcast episode, though he didn't know it was a podcast episode, they have now graciously decided to join me as co-host. Paul, did you know you were joining me as co-host?
Yes, but only for about 2 or 3 minutes. So I love it. I love it. Thank you for that awesome introduction and all the things you wove through it. It felt very accurate. Usually I have complaints and nitpicks, but I think they are absent now. Which,
huzzah!
Yeah.
Well, as I keep going, I'll try to give you a couple of nits we can pick, but let me just kind of give folks an update on what this means for the podcast. And because Paul and I have, as I mentioned somewhat on the last episode and at various points, Paul's a professional poker player. Paul has also done some poker writing. They've recently published a book and have more to come soon. And you can if you're watching on YouTube, you can see Paul is just pointing to a copy of their first book, Zen Madman's Friday Night is My Monday Morning, Volume 1, which you can find a link to with a significant discount in the show notes. Click that link to buy the book. You get like 40% off. We here at the podcast get a little bit of it back. Everybody wins. But and part of that, we've been talking about how can we start using a lot of the stuff that we're talking about with poker to maybe make a third new podcast. I have this podcast, I have the Star Wars podcast, and we were really trying to find what that lane would be. Paul and I, among other things, part of why we're interested in it is because there's so much about poker that informs how we think about the rest of the world, certainly in terms of superhero ethics and Star Wars, but also in terms of everything from dating to jobs to understanding elections and polls and stuff like that. And a lot of ways in which it does interact with the topics we talked about here on superhero ethics. We also recently did that episode, the 400th episode. Very proud of the 400th episode. And I put out a number of calls in that episode of, hey, if you're still listening, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. None of you wrote in. So our idea is we're going to treat this like the 3 a.m. radio show, where it is entirely possible that lots of you are listening. When we asked for positive stuff, you didn't say anything. But now that we're making some major changes, maybe you'll write in and let us know you hate it. Maybe you'll write in and let us know you love it. Maybe we're just going to talk to nobody at 3 a.m. in the morning and eventually build the audience some other way. So the point being, we're going to start shifting towards more of a using this is not going to be a poker podcast. There are 8 million poker podcasts out there. There may well be 8 million and one when Paul and I get our act together. And that's, of course, going to be the best one.
Of course.
But this is going to be much more about, we're going to keep talking about superhero ethics, but we're going to talk also a lot about how poker can be a really good lens for understanding a lot of the issues that come up with superhero ethics, a lot of the issues that come up in real world ethics, a lot of the issues that just come up in our world in general. And so here we are. We're going to see where this goes. We want your input. Let us know what you think. As we go along, certainly Paul and I can talk an awful lot about Batman. We can talk an awful lot about the Joker. We can talk about the movie Rounders and have a lot of fun with that. There's a lot of ways we can go.
We can talk about playing poker at 2 a.m. and me sitting there saying, I'm Batman. And yes. I believe you said, I don't remember your quote, but it was something penguin related.
Yeah, probably. Get in the duck, probably.
Yes, it was Get in the Duck. I must have lost to Deuces or something.
I think that sounds
Deuces
right.
are ducks. They go quack. Yeah. Anyway, there's all sorts of tie-ins.
Yeah. Paul, let me I hadn't thought of this before, but I'm just going to throw this question at you. You are one of the people I know who most wants to make the world a better place. Nah, actually, that's a stupid question. Well, okay, let me go with this. Paul, you are a person who is one of the people Paul, you are one of the people I know who's most interested in trying to make the world a better place. You think so much about ethics that you have a very well thought out perspective on why you want to think about systems and ideas of how to approach the world from a good position without liking the word ethics. Whatever you call it, ethics, morals, values, you have a fairly well-defined sense of them that you then use to shape a lot of the things you do in the world and to, evaluate how others do things in the world. How poker is a game that's fundamentally about taking money from stupid people.
I'll put an asterisk to nitpick the word "stupid people," but we'll get back to that.
There's a huge nitpick there, but it people will think it's a kind of gambling. It's really not. But there's I'm going to keep going with this, and then I'm going to get back to superhero ethics question. I promise. But this is, I think, a good one. Talk to me about the ethics of being a poker player.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think if you kidnapped a bunch of people and forced them to play poker with you, that would be, not a very cool thing to do. I might have a screenplay idea that involves this, but when people sit down at the poker table, ostensibly they're doing it of their own volition,
right?
And so it's a game that people play for money, and money is like the way you keep score. You can play it not for money, like we did at your that one party. We had the online. We were playing on the app, and it was not for money. And somehow I ended up with all the chips, which I think was an overstatement of my poker skill. Like, you can't just always win all of the chips because you play well. But it was kind of funny. To me, I believe in agency and people's right to, choose what they want to do with their own money. And so, I understand gambling addiction's a thing, and not everybody can afford to lose the money that they choose to lose in a poker game. I mean, maybe they're not choosing to lose it. They're choosing to wager it, and they're making ill-advised wagers. But, I just, on a fundamental level, I believe that people have the right to do that. And, the primary purpose for most poker players is entertainment. And so if that's what somebody thinks is fun and that's what they want to do, and then I can benefit off of that, to me, that's not deeply inherently different from, playing a concert and charging $500 for tickets. It's you can say it's overpriced, but you can say, well, that's what somebody chose to spend, so how can it be overpriced? And I definitely think there are, I've seen people want to quit and then people try and pressure them into staying and whatever. And I don't really like that. But just in terms of, it's a game that people choose to play. And so I think, sort of like fighting, like in martial arts, to get in the ring and then kick someone in the face. It's like, well, that's, if you remove the context, it's like, well, that's not cool. Right. But if they've chosen to get in the ring and they said, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to compete. I want to fight. And then, the purpose of the sport is to hit each other. Then it's like, well, in that context, then I think it's fine. So that's basically, that would be my short-ish answer.
And I'm guessing in the same way that every time you've told me about fighting competitions, when I know about it, there's safety gear you're expected to wear. Things, and I'm my guess is that if someone said, hey, you want to come to this underground martial arts club, no helmets, no protections, and by the way, some of your opponents might be drunk, but you'll get more money if you beat them, that's not something you're going to feel very comfortable with, I'm guessing.
And I mean, I did actually have a Taekwondo tournament where my opponent had a really bad fever, and I might have given them a concussion, and I felt bad about it, and it's they made the choice to get in the ring and to compete and whatever, and but thinking back on it, I'm like, I don't know what I necessarily should have done differently in that context, but like I wasn't as comfortable with it. In the same way that playing poker, if somebody's like so drunk that they can like barely function, it's like, okay, it should be time to cut them off. And when I was a poker supervisor and a floor for a while, I had to like kick out drunk people sometimes, right? Because if there's like, and you kind of just have to judge the point, but it's like other players will sometimes not be very happy. They're like, oh, come on, let them stay and lose all their money, and it's like there is a point at which it's like, okay, we're done for the day. And and poker games, at least like in public venues, are going to have table stakes, right? Like nobody's betting the deed to their house, literally. Nobody's putting the keys of their Aston Martin in the pot, and they're like, well, I know, and then brief aside that James Bond, Casino Royale, where they did acknowledge that they're like, okay, we know this isn't the way the game is played, but we've got to get Bond and Aston Martin, so this is this is how we're going to work around that.
Exactly. Well, and I think the Taekwondo example you just used is a good one, because to me, like, I'm kind of horrified that someone with who was in not maybe the best physical, medical state was fighting. But to me, of the three people who are kind of most involved in that, I think you're the one with the lowest responsibility, because to me, the person's coach or manager
or ref or whatever,
and also a tournament official, a ref or something like that. And I think that's also a good statement of, for me, a lot of where the ethics comes in is the idea of like, okay, playing an underground game with no regulation to me feels very different than playing where there is a room manager who's able to step in and be like, hey, wait a minute, what should you really be at the table here? And I think it's something that I thought about a lot with the online apps as we've moved from, because I remember when I first started playing poker, you had to go to Atlantic City or Vegas or find something kind of underground in order to play. And
in New York, you just had to go to an underground club or play a home game or something. And
I didn't find out about those. We'd been playing for a while, and there's a sense to me of like, and I think this was somewhat intentional, when gambling is kind of a destination that you have to go to, it's sort of a like, yes, this is an activity that facilitates, problematic behavior, but it's also, it's like, if the easier alcohol is to get access to, the easier it is for people to abuse it, and somewhat vice versa. And in the same way of like, if you fly to Vegas once a year and gamble in really unhealthy ways while you're there, that's not great, but you're not going there every weekend. You might move to Vegas and then have some really bad gambling problems, but and gambling's become much more ubiquitous and stuff like that. And here I think I want to address one of the key things of these ethical questions as well, which is, where do you see the line of poker versus gambling? Because this is a question that gets brought up a lot. And I think to many people on the surface, poker is definitely, poker is a kind of gambling. I think that there are some truth to that sentence. I think there's a lot of falsehoods and misunderstandings to that sentence. And I think there's also a wide variety in how people approach poker. Talk to us a bit about, where do you see poker in terms of like, is it or is it not gambling?
Right. So, we'll set the legal argument aside, because there's a lot of court cases that are like, what's the definition of gambling and whether a game is a game of skill or a game of chance. And we'll set that aside as far as like a legal argument. Right. And just talk about kind of semantically, what is gambling? You could say it's basically wagering something on an outcome that you do not have control over. Right. Which then, I guess it could be an outcome you have control over if you're like betting on pool and you're playing against someone else, like you have influence over, but not control over, I guess. A wager in poker is very different from a wager like at the roulette table, like, or just like any, or a sports bet, unless maybe you're Pete Rose, where you do have some influence over what happens, because a bet in poker, like when you place the bet yourself, right? When you're the one who raises or bets, it's more like a dare than like there are odds that you're offered and you take the bet or don't give the bet. It's basically saying, I dare you to match my wager, or I get everything in the middle. Right? Because in poker, we start with either antes, we start with blinds. At any given point in a hand of poker, there should be some money in the middle that doesn't belong to anybody else anymore, right? Somebody put it in, but it's not their money anymore. It's in the middle now. And so anytime I make a wager, I'm essentially asking you, hey, do you want to match my wager? Or do you want to just give me what's in the middle?
Right.
And so it functions like most bets don't do that, right? Like if I bet $200 on my sports team, I'm not asking the other team, hey, do you want to bet $200 or do you want to forfeit the game? Like that's not how most betting works, right? Having said that, there are spots in poker where, say, you make an all-in bet, and then I'm faced with a decision where I'm saying, okay, I've got these certain odds. I need to try and estimate how likely I am to win the pot. And I put that investment in, and I'm hoping to get more than that investment back, or at least that investment back. And in that sense, it's basically the same as gambling on blackjack, right? Not so much roulette where the odds are always against you. This is more like blackjack where you can keep count and you can say, the odds are in my favor now, so now I'm going to up my wager, right? Or, the odds are against me, so I'm going to minimize my wager. But, on a fundamental level, poker's heavily skill-based, but also heavily influenced by chance in the short run, in terms of like, if you and I play and I'm a better player at the given game, I'm probably going to win more often. I'm definitely going to win more money in the long run on average, but in the short run, like you've got a great chance of winning. Right. And so the next thing I would say is like, what's the relationship between investing in stocks and gambling? What's the relationship between making any personal investment, or not just investment of money, but like investment of time, investment of talking to somebody, and the payoff. And so to me, kind of like everything's gambling, not necessarily in such a literal way, but in terms of you're choosing to take an action and you don't know what the results of that action will necessarily be. And so to me, poker ends up serving like as a metaphor for so much in life. It's just that variance aspect, that aspect of the things that are out of your control, plays a bit of an outsized role. So we kind of have to learn to deal with it more directly. And I think that can actually be very useful in terms of understanding some things that are, going on in the world that are out of our control.
I think that's really true. And I think that it's funny. I have a very different definition of gambling and versus poker that I want to get to. But what you just said actually is a great way for me to bring in some superhero stuff, which, like I said, I promise we're going to keep talking about a lot.
Yeah.
Because I think, for me, if I think about, like as you said, with gambling, a big part of what you're doing is deciding how much are you willing to risk, and versus what gives you the best chance at winning. And to me, I think an example of two different people or groups who are willing to gamble, but have different ideas of the risks they want to take and the payoff, is one who says, I trust that these heroes are going to win the battle, and so I'm not going to put anything more in the pot because I think that this hand is going to win the pot as it is. And someone else who says, I want a much stronger chance of winning the hand, so I'm going to put all the people of New York who I'm willing to nuke in order to make sure I win. It's not a perfect analogy to poker, I don't think, but it's the, like, on the one hand, you've got someone who it's saying, I'm going to play more of a long shot because I don't want to have that collateral damage. I don't want to put that additional risk in, versus someone else who's like, no, I want a sure thing bet, even though it means I have to pay a lot more to be able to get my chance of winning. Yeah,
it's funny when you first started to bring up the analogy, but without the details, that was the first place my mind went.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really good, obvious one.
Yeah, exactly. And you can look at it another way, like, are you willing to risk the population of Earth at the potential, at the cost of trying to save, the people of New York. Of course, if it's a nuclear bomb and they're blowing up New York with nukes, like it's more than just New York, right? There's going to be fallout. There's going to blah blah blah. Also, you don't necessarily know 100% that you've got the nuts. Like maybe that's not going to work either. Well,
and here also a fundamental concept of poker, and I think in a lot of gambling, is the idea that you don't do it once.
Right.
It's the idea that if you're going to win 3-1, and if you're going to get paid, if you're going to get paid off 10-1, then it's okay if you only have a 20% chance to win.
Yeah, it's
because
great.
if you do it 10 times, the 2 times that you're on average going to win, like, is going to easily make up for all the losses. When your table stakes are all the people of Manhattan or all the people of the world, that goes out the window.
You're like, run it twice.
Exactly. But
I guess with the multiverse you can run it twice, but
so much of superhero media often does feel like different people arguing over what is the acceptable risk to take, and to what extent can we or can we not control the outcome. Because, and partly I bring that up because I don't want to get into too much of it now. I want to rewatch the movie to make sure I get all the particulars, but part of me thinks Nick Fury's fucking crazy when he does that, and it is trust, and it's just a trust in the players. But the part of me is like, I don't know if trying to nuke New York to stop this destruction of the entire world is actually, the worst thing in the world.
Yeah. But it's a choice.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's risk reward, right? It's how much does it cost to make this decision? What's the payoff compared to, what if I take this? You could say Nick Fury's taking the bigger risk, and sort of
right,
but also wagering less. He has the higher payoff, also, right? He gets to save more people.
Yeah, exactly. So let me now get back to my understanding of how I would break down the is poker gambling question, and there's gonna be kind of a couple of parts. Jump in anytime you want to pick a nit or agree or whatever,
Sure.
But to start with, I'd say I agree with you that like there is a kind of gambling happening all throughout everything. On the other hand, I think the word gambling can also mean something much more specific, which is when an organization, there is a company, an entity of some sort, a person, a corporation, a casino, whatever, that makes a profit off of facilitating other people's desire to engage in games that have a mix of skill and chance. That's writ large. To me, most of those games create a conflict of interest because the person that is hosting the game also has a financial incentive in you losing the game. The person who is paying the blackjack dealer and is paying for the building that blackjack tables in and all that, if you're bad at blackjack, they make more money. If you're good at blackjack, they make less money.
Yeah.
So therefore, almost all of the games in the casino, with the exception of something like blackjack, if you're able to count the cards and get away with it, maybe some other weird
Which then they're like, hey, you can't do that.
Right.
You're beating our game. I'm like,
right, because the whole point is it's supposed to be that you are at a disadvantage.
Right.
And I think here's the other part of it that to me also makes it gambling as I see it, and why I think sometimes gambling isn't a bad thing. You talked before about how the positive result of a bet can sometimes be more than just the money itself, I am someone who enjoys playing games of skill and chance where I know that statistically, if I spend 1 million hours playing it, statistically, I'm almost guaranteed to go bankrupt. Unless, again, I'm counting or something like that. So then, because like at all this game, let's just say craps, like you can get really close to 50%, but still the house has an edge. So why would you ever do it? It's because I think what gambling what gambling lives off of is thrill. That when I say I'm going to bet $100 on this one hand of blackjack, am I more likely to lose that $100 than win? Yes. And I might win 150 back if I actually hit blackjack, but most likely I'm going to hit 100 back. But I'm also going to get a thrill.
Mm.
When I, every now and then I'm playing blackjack and I'm like, you know what? This hand just feels like a good hand. I'm going to put all my chips in on this one hand. The thrill that I get is an incredible feeling. I love that rush. And I am willing to consciously decide I am willing to risk this money for the chance of getting that rush.
Right.
But still, I am risking money for the chance of a dopamine hit, for the chance of a big emotional payoff.
Yeah.
Guess what? That is real easy to get addicted to.
Sure.
That's real easy to make riskier decisions about when you're not getting good rushes in other parts of your life. When you're and certainly I've gambled in not the best ways when my life wasn't going so well and I wanted that rush to stop thinking about my mother who was dying or the mess I'd made of my life because of being shitty relationships or like whatever it was. So all that to me falls under gambling, which I think can be in a controlled way a perfectly acceptable form of entertainment, but also can be potentially deeply addicting and has to be deeply monitored and be careful about. In poker, the casino is doing so when it is a casino run poker game, or even often like a home game, hopefully run by someone who's not playing in the game. That's the whole point. The people who are paying for the table and the dealer and the chips and the cards and the drinks and the food or whatever it is, and the air conditioning, as we talk about in summer, and especially in Vegas, thank God, they don't care if I win money or lose money.
Yeah, doesn't make
They want someone to lose money so that someone else wins money. But as all that money shifts across the table, they're taking a little bit out of each hand, but they have no incentive in my losing. And for every dollar that one player wins, some other player is going to win 85 cents, 90 cents, whatever. And the rake will come in, etc. Yeah. But so to me, I guess that's where I see poker as something fundamentally different than what most people think of as gambling. There's another addendum or two I want to add on to that, but we're kind of jump in now and talk about, does that fundamentally make sense? Do you see it differently?
I do see poker as fundamentally different from other casino games, like specifically in a casino game. Obviously, in a home game, pretty often the host is going to play. Right. If it's like a real home game, if it's like not really a home game, it's called a home game because it's in someone's home, but like they're operating the game and raking it and whatever. Then really it's just an underground game, in my opinion, right? But like a true home game, usually is going to be played for stakes that like people are pretty comfortable with overall. Right. Not always, but I mean, some home games are enormous, but those really high expensive home games, usually the house is making something one way or another.
I would say the overwhelming majority of home games I've played in, the way I've looked at it is at most I'm going to lose 40 to 60 bucks. Mm-hmm. If I went out to dinner and a movie with a bunch of my friends, I'd probably, it is paying $40 to $60 for 4 to 8 hours of entertainment with my friends. That's a perfectly fine, that is a cost of a night of entertainment. No problem there.
Yeah, exactly. But in terms of like the way the casino views, I mean, this is one of the reasons casinos don't usually care that much about poker. Like you'll see a lot of casinos without poker, and you won't see that many poker rooms without casinos, right? Without some sort of game that the house has a hand in. Interestingly, you mentioned corporation earlier. In California, it used to be set up, at least, I don't know if they changed something, but it's set up so that the house actually can't make the money off of, they call them California games, so they're like card games that are they're essentially against the house, but there has to be a separate corporation set up to make that money in that way.
Nice. Okay.
But then usually it's like the brother of the owner of the main thing or something. Exactly. It's like it's not usually like really a separate entity. But anyway, I do think it is much easier for the house to be kind of impartial when it comes to judgments and whatever, which is why there's like a gaming commission usually to regulate the non-poker, the games you play against the casino. But they don't need to rig anything like in any kind of like they're cheating you way. Like
Yeah.
the game is rigged so that the odds are against you. That's just how they designed the game, pretty much with the exception of blackjack and maybe a couple other things here and there, where it's just set up where it's, in the long run, you just won't win.
Yeah.
So I do think there's a difference there between you're playing against, an entity that is running the game compared to you're playing against other individuals and somebody else is kind of overseeing it. It's like the difference between, if we're having on Sundays, we used to like get together in the Taekwondo school and just beat the crap out of each other. And like one person would be keeping the time or whatever. But like if that person was refereeing, it was like, oh, stop. Okay, you have to stop doing this. And then they could just like referee their own fight. Like that wouldn't make any sense. We didn't really have refs there. But like if you did, like you would want it to be a third party, right? You'd want it to be someone impartial. So having that as a, in a poker room, I think there is something where it's definitely easier to trust people still don't. People are still like, oh, it's rigged. They want really big pots and they want that. They don't care. They don't care. Like, it's not that there's literally never ever any cheating going on, but like when it's some company that's just running poker, like they basically just want you to play and then you pay them rake and that's it. Or they want you to play because they've got a sports book that you or casino online that they want you to do. Or in the casino, like one of the reasons they have a poker room is two people come, like say you have a couple or family or friends or whatever. One of them loves to gamble with casino games, and the other one's like, I'm not really into that, but I like poker. They go and they play poker. The other person goes and plays casino games. If they win, sometimes then they come and sit down at the poker game. Maybe the poker player goes and joins their friend for a little bit, at the rail or whatever. But like mostly it's like it's so that groups of people can come and they can do different things. Like really, or people who play blackjack, they're just like, okay, I need to chill a bit. I'm going to play poker for a while. Okay, now I'm going to go back and play blackjack.
I remember one time I was at a casino and there was more people who wanted to play poker than they had poker tables available. And I think there was like 8 people waiting to start for a game to get a seat at No Limit Hold'em. Mm-hmm. And often that's enough where you can be like, what you could have 8 people as a table. Why don't they just not start a table?
Yeah.
I had gone over to play blackjack and someone else came over and sat down next to me. I was like, oh, hey, didn't I see you waiting for the poker game? I was like, I'm waiting to get in. And we were just chatting as we were playing blackjack and we were both losing. And one of them was like, I don't get it. All of us here want to play poker. Why don't they give us a chance to play poker? And I looked at him and I went, because you're losing at blackjack. Right. Like, I mean, it's a bit more of a perfect example you're not going to see, but like we were both spending money at the better, and like I remember when I ran a board game store, I ran events for a board game store.
Yeah.
There were a lot of events that we knew we would lose money at, but as you said, it would bring people into the store. Yeah. And then the people would spend money at, they would buy sodas and candy, or they would, use the winnings they got to spend it on something dumb, and and certainly like I've won money at poker at a casino and been like, cool, I'm going to go to a really nice restaurant that happens to be right here in the casino. I'm going to go spend it at craps, and like good players probably don't do that very often, but and I think that's the other part of that.
There are some famous good players who are famous for having done that. Like, I think TJ Cloutier, who used to be called the best poker player who never won the World Series, was famous for just like blowing off tons of money in craps. And Doyle Brunson wrote a book called Super System that was subtitled How I Made $1 Million Playing Poker, but could have been subtitled How I Lost $1 Million Playing Golf.
Yeah. Well, I remember the casino we first went to play poker at, the Tropicana in Atlantic City.
Oh, yeah.
Had a Hooters in it that, right. I loved the chicken wings at, and, I didn't mind looking at things as well. But one of the things they had on their menu was the High Roller Special, which was a dozen wings and a bottle of Dom Perignon for like $200 or something like that. No one in their right mind would say, I'm going to spend $200 and go, but if you've just won $500,
right,
it's so easy to be like, this money isn't real. It's poker money. It's chips. So I guess that's the one caveat I want to add also is that I do. So I guess to me, I wouldn't say though that poker is never gambling. I'd say that poker has the potential to not be gambling. Because I do think like it is still possible to get that thrill playing poker. And there are times when, especially when I'm playing low stakes or playing like at, someone's house or something like that, where, yeah, I'll put money in on the long shot hand where I'm probably, if I did that 1,000 times, I would lose more money than I would win. But the looks on my friends' faces when I turn over a ridiculous hand that should never have gotten there, that's positive EV. That like, yes.
I don't know what you could possibly be talking about.
I would say often it's a look on Paul's face. Yeah.
I still remember that runner 2 pair.
So good. And that's the thing. Like,
yeah.
If I did that 100 times, would I lose money? Yes. But it's worth that EV.
Right.
But my point being though, that so I guess when I say that poker doesn't have to be gambling, that's the intent. It's like it, because I think it certainly can be. I think there are people who play poker because they want that rush and that thrill. And there's some who are pretty responsible about it and say, I'm going to give myself a budget of, $200 a week or, $500 a month or whatever it is.
Sure, yeah.
And they've worked it out on their budget, and it's their entertainment budget, and people who are better players make a lot of money off of folks like that. It's also very possible that it's an addiction and problematic and stuff like that. So again, all that's to kind of say, like, to me, that's where a lot of the ethics of it comes in, is that, and also the viability of it, is that poker is much more of a zero-sum game in a way that gambling is not. That that things that I think of as more like gambling, like at a craps table, if you got 10 people at the craps table, what's most likely is that all 10 of those people are going to walk away with less money than what they started. Some might walk with more. At a poker table, every time someone loses, someone else wins.
Yeah. I guess so. So if we go with like a few nitpicks, like I would say that specific definition of gambling that you're using, which I think I would say gambling is a word that is imprecise, and kind of a lot of what we're talking about in this conversation to me is less distinctions between gambling and not gambling, and more just distinctions. Like, I don't think we necessarily need a singular word to be like, like, here's a checkbox, like, is this checkbox? It's like, well, I think all the ways that we've explained, poker is different from casino gambling games.
Right.
It are like, it almost, to me, like, it doesn't matter outside of a court of law whether you then say, oh, therefore it is or isn't gambling, if that makes sense. Kind of like, to me,
I think it's more, and maybe it's coming from a defensive place.
Yeah.
I think when people criticize poker and say, oh, isn't that just gambling?
Right.
By which they mean, isn't that one more of those things where if you do it for long enough time, your chances of winning money get smaller and smaller and smaller? And I think poker is decidedly not that. And I guess that's even more of a clarification than anything else.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess I don't feel defensive about it because I've given it a lot of thought over the decades. And basically, if somebody says, isn't it just gambling? It's like, well, no, it's not just gambling. Like, that, right. But also, like, what do you mean just gambling? Like, or maybe if you've got the superhero ethics logo with the scales of justice, maybe it is just gambling, but not only gambling. But it's funny, on my other monitor I have "And Justice for All," Metallica's album cover, because that's what I listen to while playing poker. It's actually kind of cool. I'm like, oh, hey, yeah.
Well, let me ask you this: do you get that rush when you hit a gut shot?
Not really. Like, I mean, I like winning hands more than losing hands usually. Yeah. And when I win a hand in a really unlikely fashion, I'm more likely to laugh about it. But like, here's an example. I had a hand 2 days ago, maybe, where I raised somebody 3 bets and I 4-bet all in. So, I jam, and we're like a little deeper than normal. Like, usually online, you've got 100 blinds. We have like 130 or whatever. And I had ace king offsuit. And this is a pretty standard play. But as soon as I made it, I was kind of like, maybe we're a little too deep for this. Like, I didn't like my play, right? My first reaction was, I don't love how I played this hand. Not necessarily that it was a clear error, but just like, I was like, I didn't like how I thought about it, right? Like I hadn't considered, if I considered that factor and then decided this was the best play, then I'm happy with it, right? But my initial reaction was like, and I saw my opponent had queens, I'm like, yeah, okay, and we're about 50-50, but really it's more like maybe 43-57, I forget, but like they're a favorite. They have the better hand. I have to hit an ace or a king or queen jack 10 or something. And so what I do is I actually just like put my hand up in front of the table. Because I don't want to look at it. I'm just like, I'm emotionally processing the decision and sort of like what's happened before the board runs out. And I was like, okay, I don't like how I played that hand. That's fine. I'll review it later, right? But the main thing is just remember to do my process, take my time, act with confidence and play like myself, right? Like just like make the full decision. Don't skip over any factors. And then I moved my hands and I hit an ace or a king and I won the hand. I was like, okay. And like there was a little bit of like, well, I'm glad I have a few $100 more than I would have if I lost the hand. But there was also like almost a little bit of a negative feeling. Like I just won this pot. I felt like not like, I mean, I'm going to win it a lot of the time. Right. But it was like, I didn't feel like I earned it. Right. It was just like either it's a cooler and just the chips went one way or the other way, or it's like I made a bad play and I got kind of lucky. But either way, it's like it didn't have a big feeling, and so, but when I have played like moving up in stakes, or there are times, it's not like I've never experienced that feeling, right? But as a professional poker player, and even just as a serious poker player, I think there's a need to kind of get beyond, to almost like sort of kill that dopamine hit a little bit. And for me now, when I have that sort of positive feeling, it's more like I made a big bluff and like they tanked and I'm like, oh, come on. And then I get it through. I'm like, oh, phew. Right. And there's like a little bit of a thing there, or like I see that somebody had some ridiculous hand and I laugh, but like sometimes somebody else does something and they make a big hand or whatever, and I'm on the opposite end of it and I'm like, oh, that's hilarious, or I'm like, oh, nice hand, like I'll actually say nice hand out loud, partially just to kind of like just normalize the, like, when you play a lot of poker, you're going to lose a lot of hands, right? If you play a lot though, you're also going to win a lot of hands. Like that's what the long run is, right? It's a lot of wins and losses, and the more emotional swings you have attached to that, kind of just the more draining it can be. And so, I think it's important to like find the joy in the game, right? But when the joy in the game comes primarily from results, that's when it's closer to what you're calling gambling, right? When it's more of whatever that is that you're describing, that's the dominant factor then. For me, the joy in the game comes like, oh, on this particular texture, like, when they use this bet size, I think they've got like kings or queens or jacks and there's an ace on board and I have nines. So like, I don't want to call, but what if I raise here? And, it comes from like the nuances from trying to either outthink the opponent or really just being able to understand the situation in a way where like maybe something new kind of clicks for me in a way that I didn't see it before. And so like, that's where the joy in the game comes for me. And I think that's much more sustainable and healthier than just having it be results based. But
I think there you've unlocked a number of things that we're going to be able to talk about in future episodes. And again, this has been very much just the poker specific. We will be connecting a lot more to the superhero stuff and things like that. But like the results orientedness, I think I have really been trying to shift myself much more towards process rather than results, and again, it's the kind of thing that I think the more you can apply that to life gets better, and that for me, a lot of that dopamine, it used to be the hit of, okay, well, if I took a long shot to hit my flush, but my flush comes in, well, then clearly I took the right result. Whereas if it missed, I'd be like, I'm mad at myself. And I think that's exactly the kind of wrong kind of thinking. And that's also where you're chasing the rush. And I think, I think a lot of not even as much villains, but I'm like, do you mind if I give a brief kind of thematic spoiler for the TV show Spider Noir?
Oh, no, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I
I
think
do plan to watch
one of the
that.
themes that Spider Noir really explores that I really enjoyed, and we talked about this more in an episode a couple weeks ago, is that he kind of starts being a hero because he's chasing the rush. He's chasing the rush of, I just did a good thing.
Right.
And part of what that means is that when he is not successful in helping someone, it's really crushing to him.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of a great example of what we're talking about here. And it's funny because I've now identified the situation where I most allow myself to be like awesome and cheer it on, which is where I think I've played somewhat well. And someone else I can say definitively like has not played as well, but they are, because of the luck or whatever, at an advantage right now.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So, I have aces and someone else has 9-4. And because the flop was,
like
9-4-2 rainbow, I was happy getting all my chips in the middle, and then they turn over 9-4.
Yeah.
And or even more, like I have aces and they have 9-4, and on the flop I'm crushing them, and then another 9 hits on the turn. I'm like, oh my god, am I gonna lose? And then on the river my ace comes in. That's a thrill that I'll happily live out.
Sure. Yeah. It feels like justice.
Exactly.
Yeah. I hear you. The 9-4 deuce. This is the funnier one. If it's 9-4 deuce and you get it in, and then you hit the deuce. So you have the better two pair, or it comes running kings, and now you counterfeit their 2 pair. Very brief poker story. When we were in Atlantic City, things weren't great. This was like 2015 or so.
A very bad year.
I remember there was some hand where we got it in. I had kings, you had ace king suited, and you hit the ace. I was like, nice hand, and I was like, whatever, Then there was later a hand where you had a wheel, like ace through 5 straight, and with both cards, and then the turn counterfeited one of your cards, and on the river I was like ace, and it hit. So both of you had a wheel, and you just look at me like, what the hell? I was like, come on, that was objectively the funniest river card.
Yes, it was true. It was true.
So like sometimes there's little things like that are just funny, and I'm certainly not saying like you shouldn't take any joy in this or that or whatever. And it's like, I mean, you win a hand and have fun. It's when you're chasing that and that affects your play, or like affects sort of like your emotional state to a large degree, which then maybe affects your play, that it can become problematic for sure.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Any last things you want to? So I want to wrap things up. But what are you excited about in terms of coming back to superhero ethics?
Yeah, I'm excited about talking about poker.
Yeah.
But also, kind of, I wrote something that was called like a poker player's bill of rights or something like 15 years ago or so, after Black Friday, when the US government like kicked the major poker operators out of the country, whatever. And the first thing was like, poker is a skill, right? And then we sort of had this sort of publishing thing. We were going to do some stuff with that kind of didn't really take off. But that phrase to me, not just the phrase, but like I had an idea for a book that was basically going to be, and maybe I'll write this book someday, maybe I won't. But it was basically all these ways that things you can learn from poker are applicable to life, right? Yeah. There's lots of life lessons you can learn that then you can apply to the poker table, right? But there's just sort of, I don't know, I'm looking forward to kind of sharing how this game has affected the way I see things, and then kind of translating that to both like, general life stuff, but also, kind of, I don't know, seeing how that interplays with like stuff that we've talked about constantly over the last decade, because I feel like we've covered a lot of things in superhero ethics, but a lot of things we've kind of like recovered, and often I've kind of like wanted to make a poker metaphor at times, but like haven't, because, there wasn't like a high level of like assumed fluency with kind of poker lingo and whatever. And I think if people listen, you'll pick that up. Also, we'll have some materials that you can find to like understand more definitions and stuff. But yeah, I mean, honestly, mostly just like chatting with you about things that we find interesting once a week. You know, I love doing that. So I'm happy to be back as a co-host, which apparently when I listened to the early episodes, I was actually a co-host, which I had forgotten later on when I was more of a perpetual guest.
Yeah. So. And again, consent is really, really important. You don't want to, get someone over to play poker who doesn't know they're coming over to play poker, and now they're stuck and they're like, oh, well, I guess I just have to play poker. Bad. I for the most part, I think did a pretty good job of informing Paul that they were a co-host. Maybe not always the best. Now we're being very upfront. But, no, it's always been upfront. But to me, just kind of there are two kind of things that are in my head right now about all of this that I think are going to give a good idea of sort of where we're going forward. One of which is we just had this whole conversation about risk and who decides what kind of risk you're taking and what is or is not acceptable risk and what are you putting at risk.
Yeah.
I think a good first step is, like, to me, two basic ideas of what is an acceptable risk is, are you putting your like life, are you putting your like life and health at risk?
Right.
Are you betting enough money that if you lose, your chances of getting, home, house stability is put at risk? That's, I think, a real problem. And I do want to make clear that I think is distinctly different from someone who's in a situation where if they don't go to the table, they are very likely not going to have enough money for subsistence needs. That's kind of the word I was looking for before. And so they go with a little they have because that's the only path they see available to them to get those needs. And I think like the lottery, which I think is basically a tax on poverty, is something we're definitely going to talk about, and sort of how desperation can play into convincing people to gamble and stuff like that. But I think that, but even beyond that is when not only are you putting your own health or livelihood or house at risk, when you're risking things for other people. That situation in New York, Nick Fury and the council are both deciding who else they should or shouldn't put at risk without any input from those people.
Right. They didn't really have time though to
of course,
take a vote.
But like, no one had elected, no group of people.
No one had elected any of them. Exactly. Yeah. Yes. They were the shadowy organization.
The Spider-Verse movie, I think, is the first Spider-Verse movie is fundamentally about Kingpin so desperately wanting the EV, the victory of bringing back his wife and child, that he's willing to put the whole rest of the world at risk.
Yeah.
On a pretty long shot bet. A bet that maybe is, he's drawing dead. He has no outs. But the point is that like the risk he's playing with there. So I think there's a lot of analysis there. But the other thing is, and this is the thing that has already stuck with me the most. This is a conversation that Paul and I have been having off and on for literal decades, for more than half of our lives at this point. But I think one of the times where it most really came into focus for me was first in 1996 and then more so in 2024, where we were talking about the election and talking about people's responses to the election and people's response to polling. And Paul helped me understand a lot of like what was happening in terms of public discourse and the misunderstandings a lot of people had by thinking it in terms of one of the most fundamental ideas of poker and of gambling, variance. The idea of like, what does it mean that there is an 80% chance something will happen? Because, if there's an 80% chance that something will happen and then it doesn't happen on one instance, people often act like, but that's impossible. It's supposed to never happen.
Yeah.
When the reality is that if there's an 80% chance of something happening and you do it 100 times and it happens 100 times, maybe it's more like 1,000 or 10,000, but like you get to a point where it becomes deeply statistically significant that it hasn't happened. Because
100 times would be incredibly unlikely. That would be like 1 in 5 for it to never happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be like 4 and 5 to the 100th power, which is a very, very, very
Yeah.
small number.
Yeah. So even if it is 80%, even if you do it 10 times, like it
Yeah.
is, 5 times, at least there's a decent chance that's going to happen one of those
Sure.
5 times.
Yeah.
The point being, but with most of life, we don't get to run it 100 times. We just run it once.
Yeah.
But we forget that when we run it once, there is still like 80%, 20% is still if it happens.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Like 20 is a lot. Like if it's like something you really don't want to happen. Right.
Yeah.
Like if somebody's like, oh, you have a 20% chance of something horrible happening to you. It's like, that's way too much. I don't want that.
Yeah.
Like
if someone said to me, like, I'm going to throw out a number. Let's say, your net worth is $100,000. Or no, let's say your net worth is $500,000. Whatever the hell. Your net worth is $100,000. That includes your home, your car, all your clothes, everything.
Mm-hmm.
And someone says, I'm going to give you a 1 in 10 chance to win $1 billion. You have a 90% chance to win $1 billion.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to bet everything you own.
Yeah.
I'm probably not taking that bet. Even though, like, it is likely I will get it. But, like, right now, my life is perfectly livable with the net I have. If I win, my life becomes 1 million times better. If I lose, I am done. And you can talk about privilege and what's your likelihood of getting stuff back or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But, or maybe a better example is just a little gun to your head. 9 times out of 10, you win $1 billion. 1 time out of 10, you get a bullet to your head.
Yeah. I mean, the $500,000, I'm like, yeah, no, let's go. The bullet, I'm like, fuck you.
Exactly. Like you have, because it's the what are you risking?
Some people would be the other way though, because they're like, well, I don't want to live with having lost $500,000, but like,
yeah.
Or
some people where it's like, if your net worth is $5, you might be like, well, fuck it, I'll take the chance, and that,
sure, yeah.
And that, like, I say that in an offhand way, but like, that's a lot of where criminal behavior comes from, and where a lot of, like, when, helping people not be in situations where they think taking a big risk with a potential high payoff is the only way their life's going to become livable. Like that's, so.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, for people who are into these thoughts, I hope they're going to keep listening. If you're not into this, like I said, write in, let us know. But more importantly, if you want to know more about what Paul thinks about poker right now, and you're willing to spend a couple of bucks, but you don't want to be a schmuck, you don't want to pay full retail price, you also want to help this podcast a little, Paul, what can they do?
They can go to zenmadman.com. Well, first of all, there's probably a link in the show notes that you can click. But you can also go to zenmadman.com and use the code SHE400, celebrating the 400th episode that I guess recently came out. And and get this book, Zen Madman's Friday Night is My Monday Morning, Volume 1. And it's a 256 page. Well, there's also paperback and hardcover and Kindle and whatever. And those links should be in the show notes as well, with I think an affiliate code, right? But those don't have a discount, so you should just get it in PDF form on my website with the discount. And but a lot of other stuff that I've written, if you want to kind of get a taste for what it is it's basically a collection of, I have a newsletter called Friday Night is My Monday Morning. I feel like we didn't really introduce this exactly in the but it's fine. We're winging it here. We're gonna
do more of that next time.
So you can read some of my poker essays, like Life, Death, and Poker. Or no, is it Death, Taxes, and Poker? I forget the order I put them in. Poker, Taxes, and Death. I don't know. It's there's other ones that don't have death in them. So but I think a lot of it is, some of it's pokery and some of it's more broad and like things that you can learn from poker and use elsewhere as well.
Definitely. And on that continued subject, next week our topic is going to be the sunk cost fallacy. What is it? How has it shaped a lot of superheroes and supervillains narratives? And how does it affect our own life in terms of everything from financial investments to dating to a job to a podcast that you've put 400 episodes into and
That's
you
a
really
lot.
don't want to give up on.
That's a lot.
So we'll become kind of meta here. So we'll see. Anyway, thank you all so much. Please buy a copy of Paul's book using that promo code. You get some good information. Paul gets a little bit of money. We get a little bit of money. Everybody wins. So it's not even gambling. Everyone can win.
Exactly. Win, win,
on
win.
behalf of Paul and myself, thank you all so much for listening. Get dealt aces.
Aces get cracked.